we've known each other so long and poetry groups together, raising our babies together. It's amazing. And before we started, I was saying with our poets here tonight, we're all mamas. Half of us, two of us have small children at home. Two of us have grown children and even grandchildren. So it's kind of a perfect, group of poets on this birth and rebirth theme. So I'm so thankful to be doing this with you all tonight. I'm going to start with a poem that was actually just recently published in Wine Cellar Press. It's an online journal. You can check that out at winecellarpress.com. And they accepted my poem called Body Changes. And I actually wrote this when I was pregnant with my firstborn, who's almost 19. So it's an oldie, except it was just recently published. So it's an oldie, but a new one publicly. Body Changes. The rite of passage into womanhood is not complete without body changes. We turn round, glowing, then full like the moon, inspect every pinch of our mirrored images. Breasts grow tender and swollen. We are proud, show them off to our lovers. Our full glands, ready for suckling, calling for gentle handling though, under the covers. Bellies that ripen and bulge out of pants seem all too familiar. We've done this before. Of course we have. This life cycle not left to chance. Our cycles seize for another to be born. We carry the weight of new life inside. Outside, we too are born with the tide. And then I'll read from a few from Birth of a Daughter, my new chapbook. And the artwork was actually done by my daughter when she was 3. She's now 4.5. So it's kind of a collaborative project, I'd say. The first poem in this book is called Cradle the Mother. Feel the heartbeat, inside heart beat. Feel the hand making its own music. Inside the cradle, plates shifting, not forming mountains, but humans. A girl this time, a mother for herself. And I'm going to move over to this poem. I'll hold it up just to see. I don't know if you can see the way it looks. There's a lot of white space, and I call this the missing poem, Birth. Urgent, you arrived. 7 pounds, 13.5 ounces, unfed. Pink daughter. Father's forearms. Preeclampsia. Swollen. Fibroid, my uterus. You grew. Around. Frantic moments. Cry. You didn't. 3 days. Squeaked like a world. So many doctors. Rush in. I hemorrhaged up inside before the cervix closed. Yelled. Feel guilty. Labor. Let it go. Me. Birth force. Let you go. Swooped. Strider baby. Striped blanket. Still I swooned. Now I'll read the title poem, Birth of a Daughter. This is the one that's in for PoemCity, and if you're downtown in Montpelier, you can read it on the window of Zutano, the Zutano outlet store, which is very cute because I think this is the last year we'll be able to shop there for my daughter. She's getting kind of old. Birth of a Daughter. Excuse me. I birth myself anew as I birth you, daughter. I am me, plus and minus the cells expunged to create you, daughter. You arrive, doll-sized, bright-eyed, a sponge soaking up my milk. More cells I shed to make you, feed you, daughter. Am I the mushroom, the fleshy, spore-bearing, fruiting body of a fungus, or are you? Or do we form one as a verb? Do we mushroom into this life together, daughter. I write this as you are away. We call this, oh, excuse me. I write this as you are away. We call it school, though it is June and you are 3. I work, I write, I sit outside in the sun, and I can't lie. It's delicious, this time away from you. It's precious, as are you. It has only taken me 42 years to realize I am precious too. Going to move to some poems not in the book. I think these fit with the rebirth, even though I like to write about birth a lot. Excuse me, this one is actually written after my mother-in-law passed, and it's called Susan, an Elegy. Susan, made of bone and ash. Susan, mixed with dirt and calcified compost of eggshells. Susan, in the hands of those who loved her most. Susan, in the sunlight. Susan, in the honey-colored crispness of this spring day. Susan, in the baby tree, with shiny green leaves. We call it Amma's tree. I whisper her name into my sleeping infant daughter's ear. Susan, in the red hair of the crying boy. Susan, in the sun-kissed freckles of the girl who places a purple phlox at the bottom of a hole where roots will grow. Susan, in the tie-dye t-shirt. Susan, in the painted scarf. Susan, in the bright blue eyes of a blue-eyed son. Susan, in the heart of the strongest woman daughter, long flowing hair, golden like hers was. Susan, in the white hair wisps at the edges of the crown of the man she loved for 40 years. Susan, in the baby's name, with the soft tuft of new hair like duckling down. Susan, in the softest new grass, carpet of sod. Susan, even in veins, smiles, the family picture we all pose in. Thank you. I'm going to do one more. That poem has not been published yet, but it's in a manuscript that I'm shopping around as a full-length manuscript. So maybe it'll be in my next book. I recently had this poem accepted and published on Rattle, rattle.com. It's a fantastic literary journal. And it was really exciting. They have a Poets Respond series where you can write about something that's in the news, and it has to be in the news cycle from that week, and they'll publish it. And this was in response to a science article that a friend had shared. And she kind of dared her poet friends to write a poem with this science journal as the title, but the poem had to be about your mother and about sea monsters. And I was like, I got this. So I think this kind of fits a little bit with some of the rebirth. There's also a lot of spring, spring is a time of rebirth. So this one's called Genes of 500 million-year-old sea monsters lived inside us. I swim in an ocean where every segmented body is another poet or a writer, a floating leaf extracted from the paper of books never written, or written but forgotten, or written but not loved, which is to say, never published. And what is publishing but someone else's rubber stamp, an outsider's approval, like the mother's love we really crave, or like the mirror broken into shards, fallen, no, falling, gliding, shimmering, shining, at the bottom of the sea. What monsters are we to want to pick up the pieces? I hear the mother in me say, so no one gets hurt, as if cerulean creatures lurking down there in the ocean's fractured trenches are children, or were children once, and we still lurk in those dark places. Or, we'll be barefoot again soon. Spring is coming. See? See that sunshine? Who'll be the first to walk bare-skinned out over still frozen dirt and stone? Sea monsters, poets. Who will be first to thaw? Thank you. I want to hold up all of our books. Leeza's book comes out in a few weeks, so we don't have it, but I'll hold them up because I think they're so pretty together. This is Jessie's book. She'll be next. And Ava's book, The Lost Grip. Just like to hold them up because they're so pretty. Thank you for having me. It was so nice to read, and turn it over.
Thank you, Samantha. That was the perfect launch to the birth and rebirth theme. That was great. Next up is Jessie LoVasco. She's a poet and an artist and an herbalist. And if you've ever been in Montpelier, you'll know her as a force of nature. She studied poetry at Vermont College, Norwich University. Her poems appeared in Written River of High Wraith Press in 2012. First place honorable mention from Homebound Publications in 2016. The Sea Letter and Literary North. Her first online book, Imprinting Waves, is an ebook with Red Wolf Editions and was published in 2018. And she is the winner of the Homebound Publications Poetry Prize 2019 with her book, Native, released in April 2020. She's a contributor to PoemCity, and we're very happy to have her with us tonight. Jessie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's so great to be here, and thank you, Michelle and Kellogg-Hubbard Library for doing this. This is wonderful. It's an honor to read with all these other poets too. So I'm going to start with one about my mother, which is the great-grandmother of all my grandchildren, and I'd like to include her in this. Watching. As my mother mends from hip surgery, I keep watch as she travels with her walker through the hall, brushes teeth and fixes hair, watching that she remembers to hold on as each day that passes lessens the pain. I wheel her to the dock, and a blue heron glides over the water and lands. We watch the bird creep down with stealthy steps and skinny legs. Gray feathers blend in with gray rocks. It points its beak down toward the water as if to see its reflection, but surprises us with a quick dip in. It catches a silver fish in its sharp beak, then another and another. We watch it quietly climb, neck curved like a nautilus shell, making quick, long strokes, preening each feather, then standing still. There is something mesmerizing in the act of watching, removing all attention from the self to see another being. Watch each movement, fill each moment with another's grace. And the next poem, I was inspired by a line by the poet Patricia Smith called "Every Woman Begins as Weather." So I titled the poem, "She is the Rain, a Mother." Storms, thunder, and wind predict her, whether or not, mood, shivering, first breath, cold air, blood, waters, breathing each cell into its multiplication, gratification, sucking milk, tears that flow with insistent words. She is the rain, thundercloud, turbulent melding of earth and sky in mother chaotic, a house of children evaporating into stillness, long enough to give, to love, accumulate dust, make more clouds, another rainstorm, shriek of lightning, a boundary. And this is a poem that was a story I was told by a man that I met casually, and he just happened to tell my sister and I this story, and I called it "A Cry in the Woods." He held his mother's hand, walking through high grass into the wood, his legs feathered by soft green wands holding seed. She looked at the sky and breathed heavily, like winds that blew in clouds. They crossed undulating blankets of woodland debris. She teetered deeper into darker shades of trees. She heard a sound he could not hear, a baby crying, beckoning her near. She told him to stay until she returned. Her skirts faded into shadows. He sat against an oak and trusted over him, still waiting, listening to small creatures, birds quieting. After a long time, he heard rustling. She came lumbering toward him, holding an infant, whimpering near her breast like a lamb. She placed the small one in his arms. He inhaled a sweet, earthy scent, touched a soft crown of hair atop her head. His eyes burned with tears. Mother said, "This is your sister." And I had the honor of being at my daughter's birth and my daughter-in-law's birth. So I'm going to read two poems that have to do with those occasions. A blessing. Once the rhythms of my daughter's body confirmed movement toward birth, I gathered my thoughts like best friends and sat with a candle on the floor. In silence beneath the sky of stars, I recalled the laboring of my mother, asked spirits of my grandmothers to be with her, surround her as water is around fish, as bark wraps around the rings of trees. Only a woman who bore, a wise one in the wild ocean of birth, knows that one must let go, yield to the threshold between worlds, accept, like water, a blessing. Cries of childbirth. The cry of a woman birthing a child is like whale calls echoing beneath ocean waters, the cry of loons when eagle preys on their young, a chilling howl from wolves at peak full moon. The cry of all mothers screaming on their edge is an echo tone between life and death, moving within worlds of blithe woman into responsible mother, growing wings, grasping with talons, eyes magnifying with small and distant, soaring through the gateway of metamorphosis. And once mothers have children, they're always a help to other mothers as well. So this one is called Mothers Healing Mothers. Women in their nature, across constellations of time who raise children, broadcast seeds, can heal other women bewildered by birth. Embracing mothers as sisters, as breasts flow with fruited milk for their offspring, feed them inspiration with story, soup, and song to fortify their supply. Hold open the door to their hearth, cook, make tea, bring nourishment and sacred space for prayer. Offer their grandmother in her rocking chair. And the very last one I'm going to read is called Babies, in honor of all my grandchildren. 9th is coming, May 4th. It's pretty exciting. And that will be my 4th granddaughter, and I have 5 grandsons. Babies. Their cheeks, plump domes of delicate skin, like a landscape holding beaming suns, large round eyes, and downy crowns of hair. Even with no blood between us, it is our humanness that we were once all babies, and that at our core, we share original joy. That essence of our being that gets clouded in the long years of life. Every laugh and bubble that floats like a note from a song on the air is theirs to see, to run, to catch, a rainbow in each bulbous airborne sphere. I want to be near them. They are contagious. They captivate. They fill a room of silence with sound. They are messengers, small glints of light, whimpering, drinking milk, giggling, moving from floor to furniture with what seems like only seconds left, holding the most potent secret of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. My birthday is May 4th, so I can testify that that is a fantastic date to be.
Great.
May the 4th be with your grandchild.
Thank you.
I'm so loving this birth and rebirth theme, and it is my pleasure to now introduce Leeza Mase. Leeza Mase is a nutritionist, an herbalist, a poet, a translator, and an Italian immigrant living on occupied Abenaki territory in Indochina, Montpelier, Vermont. She is honored to share her chapbook, a memoir and journey of a bicultural life titled I Won't Be Long Here, published by Kelsey Books. Leeza, it's so nice to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be part of the Montpelier poetry community all these years. And it just brings a tear to my eye thinking about how special Montpelier is for all of us who love poetry, and maybe for people who didn't know they loved poetry and one day saw a poem in a window on an April day. And I also remember sitting and writing poems with Sam and Michelle over 20 years ago when I had just moved here, and sitting at poetry readings with Jessie as well, and Eva. I so look forward to hearing your words. So it's an honor to be here with all of you. And my book is a memoir. It's a story of growing up bicultural. It's a story of food, family, geography, growing up in Italy and then moving to the States. And I'll read kind of as an introduction to set the stage so you kind of understand where I'll be in terms of jumping around between continents. A poem about having a bicultural identity. The songs become my home. I sing an immigrant song of two homes, raised in a medieval city studded with cobblestones, where divination with tarocchi was born between incantations chanted in candlelight. Taken to a cow town that croons in middle America, a suburb consumed by pavement, drawing lines between ranches and mansions, where country club gates are open only when the price is right. I sing a simple song so I will not forget how pasta needs the freshest eggs, and bread is made from mother dough with grain milled tender between smooth stones in a land of olive trees that reach to the sky for centuries. How I Am American. I sit with a tape recorder and my 9th grade spiral notebook, listening to Grammy Ruth weave memories so thick my pencil will not move across the page anymore from the weight of great-grandmother Elizabeth's horseback journey across 3 forks of the Wolf River in Kentucky to chase her husband, brick mason for Wild West towns. They sold the table and chairs that came on the ship from Wales and bought a covered wagon with 4 draft horses that would deliver them all the way to Kansas City. She could not have known that soon after their baby was born, her husband would die of typhoid while mortaring outposts for Westport, gateway to the Santa Fe Trail. The recorder stops like a gunshot, but her story takes flight from the great plains of sorrow where a woman raised her daughter alone and lands on a stone at the Wolf River's shore, minstrels the tale that time forgot. So when I was 7, I spent a school year in the United States while my parents lived in Africa. It was a pretty unique experience, an Italian kid landing in a Kansas City public school. And this poem is about that experience. What's worth keeping? If no one had told you your grandmother was unstable, refused her lithium, and kept a kitchen drawer stuffed with packages of cream-filled chocolate cupcakes, you might have looked back on that American chapter with the fondness some have for their memories. You could never have imagined that Wednesday afternoons with Papi shaping dough into pumpkin ravioli and braising foraged mushrooms in your apartment kitchen would end, so you could know second grade in Kansas. What if it didn't matter that your parents left Italy to spend a year drilling for fresh water in Somalia, took you from cobblestone Ferrara to live with Midwest grandparents? What would remain of those days eating boiled hot dogs with pickle relish on white buns, going barefoot into the backyard, crouching down for mint, eating it, but not daring to share it with friends who would not have come over anyway? When you returned to Italy, it was not you who emerged, but a stunned girl wearing the delicate gold bracelet her father gave her, as though to make up for it all. A third grader who stayed after school until she'd memorized her times tables. This one's called Testamento. C'era una volta una donna. Once upon a time, there was a woman who knew that words shaped the world round as her womb, round as the cycle of seasons that brought wheat for bread. Ti ricordi? Do you remember that you are mother, sister, lover? Does your blood touch earth with every returning moon, feed soil that feeds food? C'era una volta un tempo senza tempo. Once upon a time, there was no time. Full moon shone over dark soil, so rivers could travel past boulders and diamonds to meet oceans. Non è mai finito. It is never done, because blood rises with the tides each new moon, then returns the womb to the earth that created her. And this poem is a tribute to All Saints' Day, Dia de los Muertos, also known as the day that's kind of like, in a sense, a new year and a celebration of the ancestors. November 1st in Italy. Mother Mary's sanctuary, with walls built from river stones, marks the southern corner of a garden too old for an owner. Its single steeple bell has been ringing every hour since dawn. I turn over, eyes closed, pull the comforter closer, let my warm body rest one more moment as snow cloaks craggy peaks at sunrise on All Saints' Day. Memories of hikes for flower bouquets and wild mushrooms, nights spent shaping marzipan under lamplight too dim. I must walk to keep them alive. I wrap myself in shawls, join the procession carrying a wooden Mary dressed in chipping paint and gold leaf from the downtown cathedral to her winter chapel. She will watch over gardens and graves all winter. Zia Rita stays home as her mother would have, whips eggs into cake batter, dips chestnuts in chocolate, simmers soup beans, chops vegetables in offering. Migraine. Nothing like her, but it's inescapable. She made me, running from her manic mother who owned too many pairs of red shoes for her size 5 feet. Memories would turn into monthly migraines, keep her in bed with the shades drawn while I asked her to comb my hair, boil me an egg, read my poems. I spent 6 years with those size 5 shoes because my mother needed me to keep her from going dark like my grandmother finally would, loony as they come, making me cram my size 9 feet into her shiny pumps. Now I am mother, turning back in wonder at my daughter running barefoot down the pebbled path in the rain, looking for worms. And I can read one more. I went to Catholic school for 6 years with the same group of 36 kids. It's a really special experience. And they're all still in my hometown in Italy. I miss them every day. Yeah, and this is a story of really what it's like. Raised in Mother Mary's image, the nuns would check for a handkerchief tucked into my uniform pocket, token needed to enter the marbled archways of Sant'Orsola School. Riding to school on the bar of my brother's bicycle, I rocked side to side and laughed like crazy. It seemed impossible that we could fall. Lessons always ended with church. Waiting my turn to swing the frankincense censer, I would bite off my pinky nail and curse. Too short to reach our apartment's gold doorbell, I propped the oak door open with a brick when I was sent for milk before dinner. By evening, my ponytail ached until Mom took it out, and I could curl up in bed, read my lessons, dream of anthills and Etruscans, with La Vergine always watching over. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, Leeza. That was gorgeous. Up next is Eva Zimet. Eva is a writer, illustrator, and teacher. Her field work includes group and one-on-one dynamics in professional development, recovery, and education communities. She draws on improvisation. I need to improvise a little bit. That word's not coming out, so you guys get it. Skill sets and the practice of Argentine tango. Born in New York City, Eva earned an MFA from Columbia University, a JD from Vermont Law School, and is a certified mediator, yoga, and meditation instructor. She now lives in Vermont. Lucky us. Her poetry collection, The Lost Grip, published by Rootstock Publishing, was released in December of 2020. Eva, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you to my team, Samantha Kolber, Jessie LoVasco, Leeza Mase, and Michelle Singer and Kellogg-Hubbard Library. It's great to have support for the arts, to keep the arts alive, and the arts keep us alive. So I'm going to be reading a few poems that are a reflection on the theme of birth and rebirth. The title, The Lost Grip, kind of indicates that letting go is an act of birth. Birth is a type of letting go. And in some cultural traditions, we are all mothers. So I want to plug that before I start. All right. roadkill. I do say a prayer for roadkill. The prayer is Tibetan. I'm not Tibetan, but then again, I'm not a muskrat either, or a fox, a groundhog, or a deer. Not this time around. So I say a prayer wishing the traveler a safe trip to the next place. Anchors away, you know. That's the gist. And this one is, I call it my lucky star scar. And it's a reflection on rebirth as survival as a type of rebirth. I call it my lucky star scar. Flat leaf parsley trimmed, pungent leaves bundled and stuffed into my mouth, chased with hard cheese, black tea, and repeat, because this is dinner and I'm still hungry. My neighbor grows the parsley and I'm in charge in her absence, invited to harvest. But where has she gone? She's not back yet. I cut this bunch from her plot late day. My room vibrates, earth struck green. It pairs pleasantly, I think. I loosen my grip, allow the past and now to mingle. I walk up softly to and by the heaped up thens, splicing now onto then, left to die of a stomach wound, then burned in a careless fire, then pulled from the crash, then crawled up the stairs, watched by the perpetrator from the top. Look up to me, said the gaze, and why not just die? Then I survived. Where have the others gone, though? The bright taste of the parsley perfects the day. The sunset rose, shot flat leaf green, color blocks, felling clowns, calling out. I fancy a status, and all I got was this state. It'll do, more than enough. My simple self. But where has my neighbor gone? Back soon? Stripped with blunt violence I didn't invite. You didn't think I did you? Scars made visible by surviving. By surviving, I draw my scars as talisman knots and revive my lot. I gently store the memories one by one, weaponize empathy, stock my armory, not for revenge, no, with love. And in this way, I fight for my neighbor in her absence. And this one is called Marsha P. Johnson Was Not a Drag Queen. This is no ordinary ballroom here tonight. Give it up for Latina live. Here she comes, my friend. Level gaze like a mama lion with a hip sway, casting all of us in a spell. As woman of uncanny magic, we savor among ourselves, weaving us together. The red dress, perfect. The ground she spikes in heels, her legs prepped for the flash revelation, her lips just so in sync. Quizás, quizás, quizás. The fan over her shoulder, the whole crowd goes wild. See within, a woman. Erotic, not eroticized. Born as realized. Feral, not commodified. Dangerous only to the patronized. I imagine that Marsha is pleased. Latina hits the sweet spot and the nerve. I have a red dress. I don't wear it. I have heels and I dance in them, but beyond this space, it has historically not ended well. It's relentless. It's weaponized desire. The show goes on, somewhat banal now after Latina's glory. She sits with her husband among friends, radiance shifting, with every gesture illuminating. She has defied the violence I know so close, I can smell it. For this diamond clip of interbeing, she blends the risk she takes for joy. Revel in that, I do. And a new poem that is not in this collection, but is on topic, called Nascent. I caught my breath and fastened it, but had to let go. Infinitive or imperative. I found the depth of my lungs, even the part in my back under my ribs. I didn't know that was a thing, soft and supple. Even the divers who hold their breath for 10 minutes and dance with whales, befriend an octopus, or harvest pearls. Rising, breathless, imagine their moment, breaking the surface to find that air, close call. Remember the time you woke with that feeling? At birth, remember? No? You caught your breath. You cried out. And one more title poem from the book. The Lost Grip. Don't. I won't catch every feeling like a scarce raindrop, bottle it up, call it some trendy limbic shit like that, pay to have it named and held against me. I can let them spill. Come more anyway. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. You are welcome to put questions in the chat for our readers. You're welcome to unmute yourself. You should be able to ask a question in real time. Agreed. Fabulous and vibrant each. Agreed.
I have a question. I am so curious for Lisa's new book that's a memoir, but it's in verse, right? They're poems. And so how did you organize that as a structure of a book? Like, is it chronological? Like, can you talk a little bit about how that's put together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ordering the book was kind of the most complex part of the process that I went through, because, you know, I'm talking about um, my grandmothers, my great grandmothers, my mom, my dad, my brother, and, you know, also kind of my upbringing and sort of then moving to the States. And I found that sort of framing the memoir with particular people. So mostly using my mom and dad to frame things. And then, you know, kind of hold these different pieces and use my mom as a way to just kind of represent the American side of my identity, and my dad as a way to represent the Italian side. Sort of, I think, helps things flow and make sense. And they make sense to me, and it'll be curious and interesting to hear what readers think about that. Sam, I have a question for you. I wonder what your full length collection is sort of about and how that's framed. It's an exciting project.
Thanks. Yeah, it's always hard putting books together, which is funny because I also do it for a living. But yeah, so it's funny how I got the chapbook too was because I had a different full length collection that I had been shopping around and I was getting, rejections. And then I remember there were some poetry contests that I wanted to do that were taking chapbooks. And I thought, oh, I can pull out, I always called them the mommy poems. I was like, I can pull out the mommy poems, just the ones about these specific part in my life, specifically just being pregnant and giving birth and breastfeeding. So I just took those out and I made them, I have an older son and a younger daughter. I have a 19-year-old and almost 5-year-old. So I made this chapbook just about my daughter's poems because they were more recent and new. And then I only sent it to 2 publishers before I got a contract for that one. So that was really telling about how something tightly themed, kind of like yours is a memoir and it's tightly themed. Eva's book is tightly themed. Even, Jesse's book, Native, all the poems speak to that theme. When you have a theme, it works. And so I realized the full manuscript I had been shopping around was just kind of like every poem I'd ever written. It was like a ton of poems. And so after I did Birth of a Daughter, had some time, I looked back at my full length and I pulled out different pieces. Although since then, I've also put together another chapbook that are poems just about my father and my relationship to him and his relationship to both drugs and mental illness. And that's I love that chapbook, except it's I've been shopping that around with publishers and nobody was interested yet. So I decided to take those poems, and it's small, that one is only like 20 poems. So I took those and made that part of this full length that I've separated into 3 parts. So I've got one part that is about my mother, because I have a few poems in my book that's about my mother, but I have more. So my book is about my mother, then there's part 2 about my father, and then part 3 is actually pandemic stuff, because I've been writing this whole year and I've had a few a few decent poems, some of them that have been published in journals and stuff. So I have those as part 3. And the book I'm calling right now, it's called Waiting for the Rise. And that's after a poem, but I feel like the whole book is not just waiting for to me, it speaks of like rising up and an identity, like a self-identity out of my coming from my parents. And then also, how myself is on hold, through this whole pandemic. I feel like everything and every person, we're all just kind of on hold, right? We're waiting for better times, and we're waiting to go back out to normal, and we're waiting for vaccinations, or so I kind of felt like I chose poems for that book that, even though there are some are about my mother and some are about my father, I feel like the whole thing is about this waiting as an identity to be truly who you are. So that's my full length that I'm shopping around. We'll see what happens. And I also have written a novel that I'm trying to do something with that. I write way too much. It's like my brain just goes like this all the time. And so I just write it all down. But yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I love this reading. I want to say again, I'll put a plug for Bear Pond Books. They have all of our books, and we'll have Leeza's in a few weeks when it comes out. You can find our books online anywhere that you buy books. It's great to have more poetry in your life. So I hope that everybody buys a poetry book.
Leeza, I wanted to give you a shout out for writing in 2 languages. I think it's a great way to expand readers' horizons. And I haven't seen many instances where the writer is being inconsiderate to the reader. So although a lot of bilingual poets get a lot of flack, and I hope you're not getting a lot of flack, I feel very cared for when you trust me with something I might or might not understand, and then embrace me in it. So I wanted to give you a shout out for that. I'm experimenting with that myself, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I have a Kellogg-Hubbard is asking me if I have any new children's books planned, and I do not, well, planned, of course. I mean, I dream of books all the time. This is my children's book, though. It's I did the illustration as well. It's called Lucy Dancer, and it is between the lines. It's a story about how art can be not merely an escape for someone, but a lifesaver. In this instance, dance. So yeah, that's on that topic. Thanks for asking.
Jessie, I wanted to ask you, because your poem about being there for your daughter's birth is so powerful. Like, I just wanted you to speak a little bit to those experiences more, being at your daughter's and your daughter-in-law's birth, because, you know, it's such a powerful experience in general. But I think of my daughter who's just turning 19 now and being in that position, and just, I was kind of blown away by that poem. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about that. Oh, wait, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for asking that. It was an honor to be at both, really and truly. And so the first one, my own daughter, she had a doula, and I had never witnessed my daughter be that strong. I mean, her shoulders got bigger, her strength, her quietness, that she would get so quiet and curl in and then get really strong. It was like, it just blew my mind that this, because I hardly even saw my own. I had a C-section. I had all 3 C-sections, so I didn't get to fully birth. So to see my daughter, it was incredible to see the body move in that way with no, you know, drugs or anything. And then my daughter-in-law also, she had both mothers there on either side, her husband at her feet, and the doctor was her step, okay, wait a second. Yes, her step mother. So, and she's a gynecologist.
Wow.
And so we were a force, all these women around her who loved her, but she locked eyes several times with me to get through it. Like, oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. It really, really was. The strength that comes from a woman's body that she didn't even know. And even in her next baby, I remember her saying, oh, I'm scared. Even in the birthing room, I'm scared, it's coming. But then she was this powerhouse again, you know? So it was really, yeah, they both were. That's what I'm most blown away from. You know, you wish for the best for them while they're going, and you want to support them in any way. But yeah, it was great. So I hope you get to witness that, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that reminds me, back in the early days when Sam and I were having our first 19 years ago, we used to get together to tell the birth story of each child and get all the moms together, and we would each tell that story. And that reminds me of you speaking. Like, that's such a powerful thing to hear that story. It's wonderful that you've made it into a poem. That's like another power, but like to hear you talk about it, talking about those stories is just an amazing thing.
Thank you.
Well, which is funny. So Jessie said that her daughter-in-law like forgot it was going to hurt. And she's like, oh, I'm scared. So part of why my poem about birthing my daughter is called The Missing Poem. And when I showed the page, you can see all the white space around it. It kind of speaks to that. It speaks to 2 things. It's like a double metaphor. It speaks to that as mothers, we forget how much it hurts, right? Or else we would never do it again.
Right.
And then also how our culture kind of tends to minimalize or ignore or erase, you know, it's not really widely talked about as, this woman curling in and her shoulders getting bigger and the strength, and that, when I had my son, the term bear down actually made sense to me. It was an actual bear, like a physical, an animal bear, like, coming through my body. I actually picked, it made sense to me once you go through it that, yes, it's a bear. I get it now. And so, but that poem about my daughter's birth, it had been a really long narrative poem. It was like a 2-page poem of lots of words, and it was the whole story. And I felt like it was actually saying too much. And I went out and erased words and just left, hopefully what I think comes across as like the powerful aspects, just to get a glimpse of that power out. But I also wanted it to be like it was missing on purpose, because we forget that it's such a huge thing, and it's powerful, but it's painful. And even so, my son I had at home, and it was a natural birth, and my daughter was at the hospital, but it was a natural birth. But when I told the nurses going in, I was like, I got this. I had a home birth, all natural. I got this. And then it was totally different and very painful. And I kept saying, I don't got this. I don't, and the nurses had to remind me, a nurse that I'd never met before had to look me in the eyes and say, you did this before, you can do this. And I was like, oh, I got this. Like, it's just that forgetting is just, it's crazy.
Wow.
Anyway, I could talk about birth and poetry all day long. So thank you.
Do we have any other questions from our lovely audience tonight? Or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there something in the water there in Montpelier that you have so many wonderful poets?
That's a good question.
It's the library, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's the library.
The library. Okay.
The library is the lucky one in this, because we do get to draw from so many wonderful, not just poets, writers, artists, musicians, like, you name it. This theater, like, we have so much wonderful art, and the library is just lucky to be able to, when we say we're gonna have a program, it's like, okay, there's plenty of programs. But it does feel like a blessing to be here. I will say that. I think all of us feel like to be a poet, to be a musician, to be an artist, it feels like a blessing to be in a community that values it so much and that celebrates it and that, supports the arts.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. I love seeing the comments coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure and
Yeah.
beautiful reading. Yeah. Thank you to our poets again. It's an embarrassment of riches.
And there's more PoemCity events coming up, so I hope everybody gets a chance to check them out.
Yeah. Lots more readings and lots to see and do. Well, I think that's it for tonight, everybody. Again, what a pleasure. What a wonderful way to spend an evening. Happy National Poetry Month.
Thank you. Thank the library.
Yeah, it's believe me, it's our pleasure.
Thank you
I
all.
need to give a shout out to Mary, who's here, because I think she's been to every single one of my readings. And Mary is my son's grandmother, and I wouldn't be who I am without her. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you all. It was wonderful.